The Mexican government has requested to join the lawsuit against Israel at the International Court of Justice, where the Zionist regime is accused of genocide in the Gaza Strip. Russian President Vladimir Putin warns the North Atlantic Treaty Organization, NATO, that there will be consequences if it authorizes Ukraine to attack the Russian territory. In Venezuela, Foreign Minister Ivan Gil received the Prime Minister of Sao Tome, Principe Trovora. Hello, welcome to From the South. I'm Ana Marrero from the teleSUR headquarters in Caracas, Venezuela. We begin with the news. Stay with us. In Palestine, Israeli army tanks arrived to the center of Rafah for the first time since the beginning of the Zionist regime war against the Gaza Strip. The Israeli army continues its onslaught against the city of Rafah despite the order issued by the International Court of Justice that urged it to stop the aggressive. According to the Gaza Civilian Defense, the occupation forces continue their bombardment and artillery attacks on the region. At least 500 doctors have been killed in Palestine by attacks and bombings by the Tel Aviv regime since the beginning of the genocide on October 7, 2023. The Gaza Health Ministry confirmed the death of medical personnel and some 138 nurses as a result of the Israeli bombardment of the Gaza Strip to date. The Health Ministry reiterated its call to the international community for the protection of health personnel and institutions. It also called for increased pressure on Tel Aviv to allow the entry of humanitarian aid into the Gaza Strip, especially medical supplies. The Mexican government has requested to join the lawsuit against Israel at the International Court of Justice, where the Zionist regime is accused of genocide in the Gaza Strip. The International Court of Justice announced that Mexico will be part of the case following the complaints filed by South Africa at the end of December. The Mexican representation points out that on May 24, Mexico filed with the Secretary of the Court a declaration of interventions in the case based on the application of the Convention on the Prevention and Punishment of the Crime of Genocide in the Gaza Strip. European Union foreign ministers unanimously agreed on Monday to call for an association council with Israel to discuss the country's compliance with human rights obligations under the EU-Israel trade deal, also known as the Association Agreement. The bloc also intends to use the meeting to confront Netanyahu's government about its compliance with Friday's ruling by the International Court of Justice, which ordered Israel to halt its intense military offensive in the city of Rafah.
Killing and burning more than 40 people, among them many children. You can imagine how horrified we are, all of us, for these such events. The ICJ is the highest court of the United Nations system. All members of the United Nations have the obligation to comply with these decisions. We at the European Union, we have been built from the ruins of the Second World War and been always a strong supporter of the International Court of Justice.
In Spain, students from the Autonomous University of Barcelona hold a pro-Palestinian campaign and demand the cessation of relations with Israeli institutions. The university students mobilize in all the campus to call for maximum participation in this march that condemns the genocidal acts of Israel in the Gaza Strip. The students will also hold an assembly to determine the strategies to be implemented in the coming days if they do not receive a response from the authorities.
There
has been a terrible massacre that we have seen in Rafah, of people burned alive, children without heads. We have the recognition, the concentration that we have called today. The truth is that the important thing is to keep Palestine on everyone's lips. The problem is that the recognition in the end has no material impact, but in terms of having a presence, it is important.
El reconocimiento de Palestina puede ser un paso.
So the recognition of Palestine may be a very important step to begin to cut these relations with Israel. But what is more important is that the government of Spain, whichever party is governing it, cuts the arms buying and selling relations, which in the end is the one that most directly affects the lives of the Palestinians who are suffering the genocide. So a step towards, recognizing the Palestinian state can be positive, but more actions are needed that will end the collaboration in genocide.
In China, during a press conference held on Tuesday by a spokesperson from the country's foreign ministry, the nation expressed its grave concern following the Israeli attacks that killed dozens of people in a displaced persons camp in Rafah.
China's position on the Palestinian-Israeli conflict is consistent and clear. We oppose any action that violates international law, including international humanitarian law. We ask all parties to protect civilians and civilian facilities and strongly urge Israel to heed the call of the international community and stop the offensive on the Rafah. The world needs to work together to de-escalate and end the humanitarian crisis in Gaza.
Let's take a very short break, but remember you can now join us on our TikTok account as teleSUR English, where you'll be able to see news in different formats, news updates and more. Stay tuned for more news. Welcome back to From the South. Russian President Vladimir Putin warned the North Atlantic Treaty Organization, NATO, that there will be consequences if he authorizes Ukraine to attack the Russian territory. Putin's statements were made at the conclusion of his state visit to Uzbekistan. The Russian leader points out that an escalation of the Ukrainian conflict will entail serious consequences, which could reach the European countries. He also reminded that representatives of NATO member countries, especially the small countries of Europe, should be aware of what they are playing with because they have a small territory with a dense population.
The representatives of countries that are NATO members, particularly in Europe, particularly in small countries, should be aware of what they are playing with. They should remember that these are primarily countries with small territories and dense populations. And this factor they should take into account before they speak about strikes deep into the Russian territory.
Russian President Vladimir Putin warns that the West is manipulating the conflict in Ukraine and assured that any long-range attacks on Moscow will have consequences.
Nobody talks about the shelling of Belgorod and all the surrounding areas. Everyone is only talking about the fact that Russia has opened a new front and is attacking Kharkiv. Not a word. What causes this? They did it with their own hands. Now they reap the fruits of their creativity. The same thing could happen in case of using long-range precision weapons you ask about. In general, this constant escalation can lead to serious consequences.
The Russian President Vladimir Putin warned that his country is prepared to do what is necessary in the face of a possible escalation in Ukraine.
This is an escalation and yet another step towards a serious conflict in Europe and a global conflict. Do they need this? Okay, we will in any case do what we consider necessary, regardless of who is on Ukrainian territory. And this is what they should definitely know.
The Meteorological Office of Pakistan revealed that temperatures exceeded 52 degrees Celsius in the southern province of Sindh on Monday. According to the institute, the temperature record was registered in Monjoudoro City. It was the highest of the current summer and close to the country's all-time high of 54 degrees Celsius. The heat wave is expected to continue for at least a few more days as doctors treat heat-stroke victims in hospitals across Pakistan and call people to stay indoors.
We're here to bathe and save ourselves from this extreme heat. The temperature here is around 49 degrees Celsius. We've had 18 hours of blackouts in our homes. the ones we voted for, our legislators have generators in their houses. We feel humiliated. The canal water is the only option we have to keep cool.
In India, at least 21 people were killed on Tuesday after the Aston quarry collapsed due to heavy rains caused by tropical storm in the northwest of the country. The Mizoram Police Director General reported that rescue teams continue to work to locate and rescue people who might be under the rubble. According to the authorities, the quarry had been inactive for almost 3 decades, but a heavy rainfall caused landslides affecting several roads in the area. Let's take our final break, but before we invite you to join us on our WhatsApp community for our English-speaking audience. You can scan the QR code on the screen to join directly and share the link to reach more people. Constant news coverage of Latin America and the Caribbean, as well as the rest of the world. Stay connected and informed with teleSUR. One financial break, don't go away. Welcome back. In Venezuela, Foreign Minister Ivan Gil received the Premier of Sao Tome and Principe, Patrice Trovoada. The government is making progress in the consolidation of diplomatic relations and the so-called South-South cooperation with the African country. This visit is part of a new chapter in bilateral cooperation to continue strengthening ties between both countries. On this occasion, both nations will discuss common needs and objectives to establish complementary agreements. In this regard, through a post, Foreign Minister Ivan Gil said that the visit marks a new chapter in bilateral cooperation and friendship between both peoples, strengthening the ties between Africa and the Latin American and Caribbean region. He also added that together they will discuss common needs and objectives to establish complementary agreements. In Venezuela, the 17th Ordinary General Assembly of Indigenous Peoples and Communities is underway. The forum that will be held until May 29 in Caracas, the capital of the country, brings together representatives of 16 indigenous and governmental delegations from 22 Latin American and Caribbean countries. The purpose of the meeting is to discuss strategic policies that benefit women, youth, and the economic growth and social and cultural development of the region's indigenous people. Colombia's Minister of Foreign Affairs, Luis Gilberto Murillo, denied that his government had delivered a draft of the political agreement to Venezuela ahead of the presidential elections in this country. Murillo made a statement after the media had spread the news and recalled that at the meeting held on April 17 between Colombian President Gustavo Petro and his Brazilian counterpart Luis Ignacio Lula da Silva, the Venezuelan election was discussed. However, he assured that no documents was prepared in this regard. And now shifting topics. 4 Latin American female boxers triumphed in their matches at the Pre-Olympic Boxing Championship in Bangkok and continued their quest for a place in Paris 2024. In this 57-kilogram division, Colombia Charlitis Orozco defeated Yunus of Azerbaijan 3-0. Venezuelan Marilise Iriza defeated Vietnamese Dame Kim Lu 5-0. Mexican Citlali Vanessa Ortiz dominated Australian Danny Reid by the unanimous decision. And finally, the Brazilian Viviane Pereira won by split vote 4-1 against United States boxer Naomi Graham. This tournament, the last boxing qualifier for the 2024 Olympic Games in Paris, will be held until June 2nd. And as the Roland Garros French Open reaches its third day of competitions, let's review the outstanding Argentinian tennis players performing at the tournament.
The first to celebrate was Sebastián Baez, the main Argentinian racket, who played for almost 4 hours to defeat in 5 sets the Brazilian Gustavo Heide by 4-6, 6-3, 6-1, 4-6 and 6-3, thus advances to the next round where he will face the Austrian Sebastian Ofner. Another tennis player that achieved victory was Francisco Cerúndolo, who defeated the German Yannick Hanfmann in a match of 1 hour and 58 minutes of 3 sets of 6-3, 6-3 and 6-4. And now he will face the Austrian Filip Misalek. In the other hand, some athletes from the South American nation who didn't reach the next phase were Pedro Cachin, who fell in 3 sets of 6-2, 6-3 and 6-1 against the American Tome, and Julia Riera, who lost to the Romanian Irina Begu in a double set of 6-2. The tournament that started on May 26, its competition phase, will host some of the best tennis players of the world until June 9th.
We go to the world of the NBA, where the Boston Celtics were crowned kings of the Eastern Conference after the beat in the Indiana Pacers in a Game 4 by a score of 105 against 102.
Boston Celtics, who were arguably the strongest team of the regular season, swept Indiana Pacers in the Eastern Conference Finals, this after winning all 4 games of the key. The Celtics will play in the NBA Finals for the 23rd time and have the chance to break the tie they have with the Los Angeles Lakers for the franchise with 17 rings and the most wins in the history of the NBA. Now the Green Team awaits the winner of the Western Conference Finals, where the Dallas Mavericks leads the series 3-0 over the Minnesota Timberwolves.
And in Iquitos, part of the Belen District in Peru, the first ever Muyuna Floating Films Festival was held from May the 15th to the 26th to boost indigenous cinema and raise awareness for the safeguarding rainforest.
In Belen, community life revolves around water as dwellings and businesses are on stilts, as months-long floods regularly occur. Even canoes are the typical means of transportation in the area. Therefore, the screen of this festival is set on a 10-meter-high wooden structure so that residents enjoy films from their canoes or homes' windows. Gianmarco Moreno, content creator, shares his views about it.
This space is to give, to lend a voice to other causes that almost do not listen to us and that the people of Belen, where we were, have known a little bit. Perhaps some have never been to a movie theater and through the festival could see how the experience is. Even more if it was a floating cinema, friends in boats, and it is a super cool experience.
Co-executive director Daniel Martinez Quintanilla unfolded the festival screen films from Thailand, Brazil, Taiwan, Panama, and other nations with tropical forests, as well as other made by young Peruvians, as the animated short film The Engine and the Melody, which is about an ant that fells Amazonian trees and a cicada that manages to regenerate the forest by playing a prodigious flute until everything changes when a wildfire happens. All of these films are calling on protecting forests.
It is a festival that aims to celebrate the beauty of the world's forests, but it is also a form of resistance and a way to denounce the destruction of the forests. And it aims to be a meeting point for activists and filmmakers from around the world who understand film as a tool for transformation.
The majority of the Belen population stems from rural areas of the Peruvian Amazon, as they belong to various indigenous groups, including the Cucama, Yagua, and Bora. Thus, they are very aware of looking after forests.
I think there are many people doing things like this in the same line, to understand what is happening with the forests, to understand how they are being damaged and how something could be done to take care of them, or, I don't know, to counteract this attack.
In Quechua language, Muyana means a whirlpool formed in mighty rivers. The first Muyana Floating Film Festival paid tribute to global forests and their indigenous peoples. The event urges humanity to respect them and face challenges wisely, as the future of humanity is at stake.
We have come to the end of this brief, but you can find these and many other stories on our website at telesurenglish.net. You can also join us on our socials. We're on Facebook, on X, and on Instagram as well. For Telesur English and from the South, I'm Ana Marrero. Thank you for watching.